We are still short. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're still short for 2.
I see Martin there. Bonnie?
Look, good morning, everybody. Just bear with us for another 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, and Sarah is 1 minute away now. Look, I wonder if I could just warmly welcome you. My name's Ewan Wilson. Welcome to the Hearings and Engagement Committee for the 21st of June. We are just waiting for 1 or 2 other elected members to join us to be able to achieve quorum. A lot are joining us electronically, so don't be disappointed you're not seeing us face to face. One's even joining us in the lift. She's so dedicated. Although if it's a lift, she's frozen. So we're just going to wait. We're still at 7. We need 1 more. So please bear with us and we'll try to get things underway the minute we have the numbers.
Hi guys, I'm here.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay, so it looks like we now just have 8 with Sarah walking towards us. So with that, I'm happy to open the meeting. I have apologies. I have quite a few apologies today. I have apologies for an early departure from Councillor O'Leary, from Councillor Bunting. I believe I've got a early apologies for departure from Councillor Thompson. I have...
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Okay, wonderful, because that may become critical very soon. I have an apology from Councillor, Mayor Southgate. She's on council business. I have an apology from Councillor Hamilton, Councillor Nada Ralph. Councillor Mark Donovan has kindly joined us. He's unwell, but he's come to make quorum. And I have apology from Councillor McPherson and Mangai Hill. Right, so it will be a close run thing, but we have just the numbers currently. So I'll move the apology, second by Councillor Maxine. All those in favour say aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Moving to item 2, confirmation of the agenda. We have 2 items today. First item is the Hamilton Speed Management Plan review, and then the second item is the traffic speed limit and road closure hearing terms of reference. That's the agenda. I'll move, second by Councillor Max. All those in favour say aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Confirmation of the hearings and engagement open minutes of the 5th of April. I'll move, seconded by Councillor Sarah. All those in favour say aye. Those against?
Mr. Chair, just to help with quorum, my event's been cancelled, so I'm here for the duration.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So thank you for that. Right, so we've moved the minutes. We are now on to item 5. Robin, I wonder if I could ask you to come up and just give us a brief introduction, and then we'll go to the first of our public submitters.
Good morning, councillors.
Morning.
So the speed management plan, this is a refresh of our current plan. The refresh has been completed to meet the requirements of the new speed limit rule that came into effect in May, and has really some minor tweaks on the previous speed management plan. We've added a few more streets, provide a little bit more clarity around the upcoming program of works. So yeah, a real critical step for us continuing to meet our speed management requirements, and I'm happy to hand over now to the submitters.
Thanks, Robin. Thank you for that brief introduction. Right, so I understand the first submitter is Graham Ferry. Graham, if you would mind coming up to the desk with the mic. You have 5 minutes to cover the salient points of your submission, and if you'd like to leave just a minute or so for questions from colleagues, that would be great. You've got the floor.
Thank you, Councillor. And excuse me, thank you for this opportunity to share today. Very brief bio. I've worked in local government for some 30 years, my initial experience being in roading design and traffic signal design, my latter years in the development field, also had a number of years in traffic consultancy, so it's not an unfamiliar field. Obviously, speed management planning is never undertaken in a vacuum. It's set against the context of roading infrastructure, modes of transport, road user behaviour, land use planning, development, and so on. In this context, I acknowledge and applaud the aspirations of Vision Zero, and I wholeheartedly back the initiatives to effect shifts in transportation modes, bringing a renewed focus on cycling, promotion of public transport, and of course we've got the added factor of scooters in there too. Obviously, Council can call on best engineering solutions to work towards desirable outcomes, but perhaps more challenging is the field of road user behaviour and how to change entrenched driver expectations and patterns of behaviour. I note that a lot of our historic roads that we have inherited are long, straight, wide, and quite a challenge when we talk about limiting speeds. And so we're talking about how to change entrenched expectations and patterns of behaviour. My first particular comment in regard to speed management is what I dub the culture of haste. With ever-growing vehicle ownership and increasing road congestion, we, the typical road users, have grown more and more impatient at delays. We drive always, it seems, in a hurry. I own the road, I have the right to get to my destination without delay. Move over, look out, thank you very much. One very evident symptom of this frustration at these infringements of our rights is the running of red lights at signalised intersections. It doesn't take more than a couple of phases at busy intersections to see drivers pushing the boundaries. Indeed, I came on a bus this morning who came through a particular intersection. The orange light came up. He was determined to get through it and barely did. People accelerate to get that very late amber, as my bus driver did today, no names mentioned, or blatantly proceed through a full red. We're shockers sometimes at this impatient, I've got to get there, and I own the road kind of mentality. We're not particularly good at roundabouts either. Fastest in, first out. High-speed entry and minimal delay. My second comment is slightly sidetracking, but into a brief foray into the field of development, and I won't take much time on this, except to say I've been lately impressed by the proposed Sunfield development in Takanini, which promises 5,000 new homes plus public amenities, all with fewer roads and virtually no individual garaging. And while not specifically a focus of speed management, it heralds a much-needed innovative approach to development that dovetails beautifully with the aspirations of central and local government for health, well-being and livable spaces. And for the record, I'd urge Council, in the wider context of considering people safety and well-being in Kirikiriroa, to embrace innovation as the best practice to achieve the outcomes highly aligned with speed management, shifts in transportation modes, and of course, Vision Zero. and we're very mindful of the tragic accidents on the Blenheim-Picton Road over the weekend. Enough said. I'll just make one comment. I'd be interested in hearing what consideration has been given to the option of installing speed cameras in general, and more specifically red light cameras at a signalised intersection. I note from Waka Kotahi's Back to Zero strategy that Sweden seems to have some success in this area. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Graham. I have a question from Councillor Maxine.
For your submission and for your years of service to the council. I guess that gives you a very unique perspective on how our roads are made and maintained, etc. And I'm interested in the comments that you made with regard to driver behaviour. And particularly around what suggestions that you might have that tackle the criticism that council might get when we make changes to prioritise other forms of transport or indeed cycling and pedestrian.
Yes, I'm very much aware that you do come in for the flak, the Mike Hoskins of this world. I love their motor cars and I want to stick with them. I don't have too many suggestions. I was groping in the dark to come up with some, to be honest, because it is a field where there needs to be a shift in public perception, and that takes quite a bit of time, quite a bit of education, and sometimes, I think as we have done with cycleways, we just go and do it and carry the goals forward in the face of not entirely convincing public support, from the motorists. And I wonder if the same is with red light cameras, speed cameras or something. I know there's been flack in the past in regard to them being seen as just a revenue collecting mechanism. And again, if they work, why not use them? And why not just go in the face of the public outcry that might happen, because the priority here is actually saving lives.
And you believe that that safety message is a much safer way for us to advance the kind of mode shift that we want to be able to promote?
Yeah, well, I just note from Waka Kotahi's paper that Sweden has had some success in reducing road crashes and fatalities by the use of well-publicised speed cameras. So they're not hidden traps so much as they're there, we know they're there, and they're used to that end.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Graham. Thanks for your time today. Really appreciated the submission. Colleagues, we have to stop momentarily. We no longer have a quorum. Councillor Bunting has gone off to a Makariki event, and so we've now lost quorum. I understand Councillor Robb is his most recent update just 10 minutes away. So I'm in this embarrassing situation where I'm having to halt the meeting for lack of quorum. And so I think I have Shona, who was scheduled next. She's not here. But I do have Mr. Butler. Right. Mr. Butler, I ask for your forgiveness. Just bear with us as we manage this procedural issue. We'll need to wait at least until we get one other councillor. I do apologise, it is embarrassing. So just bear with us. I'll just adjourn the meeting for 10 minutes until we're able to get one more councillor. You sit. chosen to go to an event over a standing committee of council. We have 8. Wonderful. All right. So let's get back underway. Mr. Butler, thank you for your patience. We've allocated 5 minutes. If you'd cover your salient points and then just leave a minute or so for any questions. You have the floor.
Thank you, Councillor. I will try. My name is John Butler. I've lived in Hamilton since 1973. What I have here today is my original submission, plus things that have come through feedback from the community. It's a total of 7 pages. Not all of you will have those pages, but I'll be as succinct as I can in the time.
Mr. Butler, this is not taking away from your time. Colleagues, this is a copy also on diligence. Mr. Butler's, yeah. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Is this coming through? Am I close enough? Thank you. I'd like to briefly explain the purpose of the 7 sheets. Page 2 is a copy of the 2 original submissions that I made. Page 3 is a blow-up of the St Andrews and Beers Court neighbourhood area, showing the road speeds as originally circulated in the council for comment. Page 4 is a plan of the roading network in St Andrews, as was 3, but it shows the speeds that we think are appropriate for the area. That is 40 kilometres an hour for all residential streets. For clarity, the roads that have been affected are accent marked in yellow. Page 5 is a roading plan for the St Andrews Beers Court area, giving the street names. Pages 6 and 7 I will now like to speak on. They are giving updates that have come in from the community. Exclusivity. Whilst this submission applies to St Andrews Beers Court, it's only because I've lived there and know it. There's no reason why the same logic shouldn't apply to all suburbs. What's basically wrong with the present mix of road speeds? The quiet, out-of-the-way streets, residential roads, cul-de-sacs, are gazetted at 40 kilometres an hour. The busier feeder residential roads, where all residents have to travel on, have many more cars, cyclists, pedestrians, and a higher risk of injury, remain at 50. The need to reduce residents' carbon footprint has not been taken into account, and residential safety has not been properly taken into account. The 2 basic aspects that I will be covering, which is walking and cycling. Firstly, walking. Pedestrian deaths and injuries will be potentially halved. Road noise will be significantly reduced. Walking will become a joy, a part of the day's routine. Street crossings will be easier and safer, and more people will leave their cars at home. Cycling, all of the above apply, and cycling will become a viable transport operation again. The fear factor of passing cars and moving out into the transport lane will be reduced, and more people will leave their cars at home. How do I know a lower speed would help? Recently, a week in Oriwa showed me what 30 kilometres an hour does to walking and cycling. And in Brisbane suburb I last went to 15 years ago, their main area was 40 kilometres an hour, and you could dine on the street and you weren't worried by traffic. Councillors, thank you for the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for your succinct presentation. I have questions from Councillor Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, John, for your presentation. It's actually really clear. I just had a couple of questions. You talked about clearing the cycle lanes on each side of the road. So which roads are those that you're referring to?
Well, in our suburb, and I can really only talk to that in detail, Beers Court Road has a cycle lane and Total Drive has a cycle lane, and then the whole length of Sandwich Road has none, although there is what we used to call the cycle lane there, but it has cars in it. And as far as a cyclist is concerned, those need to be cleared of cars and somehow organised so that there is a cycle lane both sides. That's what that's about.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of, you didn't mention, I don't think you mentioned Te Rapa Road here, but obviously it feeds, you have to go along Te Rapa Road often to get into this area. Do you have any comments around the speed on that road?
No, as a cyclist, I would never go on Te Rapa Road.
Yeah.
And I didn't consider it. I considered Te Rapa Road as the border of the suburbs,
Yeah.
as is the river on the other side.
Mm.
So no comment at all.
Thank you. Cheers.
John, I have no other questions. Thank you very much for your submission.
Thank you for the coffee too. It's great.
Oh, you're very welcome. Apologies for the delay. I now have Peter Boss. Peter, you're very familiar to us and to the Chamber. Thank you. You have 10 minutes. Please leave a couple of minutes for questions. The floor is yours.
Okay, there was an image I asked to be sent through. Thank you. So I'm representing Living Streets, which is a walking focus group. So Living Streets supports the speed management plan. Living Streets supports a 30k limit near schools, which will help to promote healthy and social benefits for more students walking to school. Living Streets supports a 30k speed limit near suburban shops, which will help to promote the economic benefit of more people shopping within walking distance of where they live. Living Streets asks, I've got 4 points here, that the 5-year safety speed management plan be completed within 3 years. Hamilton City Council, just correct, there's a mapping error on Wairuri Drive, Hokanui Road roundabout. The speed limit here is the same as Hokanui Road, not Wairuri Drive. We ask that an additional principle be added, this being the posted speed limit of roundabouts be set at the speed of the lowest street entering the roundabout. So very similar to what we have at Hokanui Road, Wairuri Drive, where the speed limit is set at the Hokanui speed limit. An example of this is, another example is this Te Rapa, the speed limit on Te Rapa Road roundabout. Ideally it should be posted at the same speed of Bryant Road and Sunshine Ave. And the fourth one is Heafy Terrace there. Ideally we'd like the speed lowered to provide a safe and better connection for people crossing to Claudelands Park from the higher density area across the road there. As you can see, this is Claudelands Park. All the footpaths come together there towards the street, so that would be the main footpath entrance. Yet the road network doesn't recognise this at all. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Peter. No questions from my colleague? Oh, yes, Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah,
Hi,
thank you, and thanks, Peter, for presenting again. It's always refreshing to see you in the chamber. You mentioned about reducing speed limits around shopping centres.
Yes.
And I was thinking here that the Heafy Terrace one, which you've mentioned there, and I read in another submission from a resident that it's, I'm thinking of the Heafy Terrace shopping centre where the fruit shop, where there's shops
Yes.
on both sides of the road. That is a lower speed area,
Yes,
I
yes.
think, but we haven't done the signs there, the signs?
You are in the process of doing that.
Oh, okay,
That's
okay.
very good, what you're proposing to do, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's the typical shopping centre that you would like to see?
Oh, yes, all the shopping.
That reduction around, because there's lots of those around the city, aren't
Yes,
there?
and it's a good example of what you're doing, and that's the sort of thing we support, yes. very much,
Okay,
yes.
okay. Okay, so I'll probably, I've got a question there that I'll probably ask a little later, Chair, with Robin on that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, I have no other questions, nothing online. Thank you very much for your presentation. Colleagues, that now brings us to an opportunity for staff to seek some direction from members as to what further information, based on the verbal and the written submissions, that we'd like to include in the deliberations report. I wonder, Robin, if you would be interested in adding anything else to the context, and then we can go around and give you that feedback.
Thank you. So I guess just to add a little bit of context, for the process from here, what we're looking to do under the new rule is to get approval for our speed management plan, as what they describe as an interim speed management plan. The rule requires us to work with regional council and to produce a regional speed management plan in time for the next LTP process. So we got on with this process slightly earlier than that rule coming out. I think that's going to put us in really good stead to enable us to carry on working over the next couple of years of this LTP, noting that we will have to do that regional one for the next LTP. So it's really great to hear the comments from the community, such as, bringing the program forward, making changes, are all things that we can incorporate into the next plan. So that's really great to have that direction coming from the community, and obviously I'll be looking forward to direction from elected members as
Excellent.
well.
Thank you. All right, colleagues, I'm going to open that up for elected members to start giving some of that feedback. Councillor Robb, I know you have a question, so could I let you go first?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I've got 3 questions. If
You're allowed 3. We're very generous here. I'll give you 5.
I've been saving
as a
them up
special.
for Robin. Just that first one on the shopping centre and the one around Heafy Terrace, which was an example, I think, in one of the submissions. Are we progressing on that specific one, and generally on those shopping centres similar to the one in Heafy Terrace?
Yes, so we've been out for consultation, and we will be taking that report, pending the adoption of the plan. We'll be taking that report to the July traffic panel for adoption.
Okay.
The 30k, and then we'll be looking to raise the zebra crossing. So we're doing it in conjunction with some works as well. So it's a signage and a bit of road marking, and then in that case, there's an existing zebra crossing. We'll be looking to raise that just to reinforce that lower speed.
And there's shopping centres like that all around. I mean, there's one in Varden Road, isn't there, which is on a reasonably dangerous corner, or 2 dangerous corners going in and out of,
Yes, we're working on Grandview. Has also got some. So yes, there's as you say, Councillor, there's lots of them around the city.
And there will be a lot of signage required for those, given that I'm thinking of Heafy Terrace, there's about 6 other streets that kind of connect.
Yes, so we obviously have to pick and choose the exact extent of that as well. So yeah, that's all part of the low cost, low risk program has funding for doing that work.
Just on cycling, and I noticed John's comment that he would not cycle down Te Rapa Road. Are we getting to a stage in Hamilton where we should be recommending cycle routes for cyclists to use? And I'm thinking here of yesterday's bus trip, which a number of us went on, and we saw the fantastic cycle route down Ruakura Road now, and whether we should be recommending the best cycle tracks to use in Hamilton, given that we're not going to have them in all of the streets ever, but we're not going to have them where many cyclists would like them even now, given the cost constraints.
So I guess there's two parts to my answer. One is there are already maps available for the cycling community to let them know where there are good facilities. The second part is that the biking and micromobility business case looks at exactly the sort of creating that hierarchy of cycle facilities. So the sort of facilities that you saw in Ruakura, where you've got them off-road separated, is the sort of thing that can be retrofitted in the likes of Te Rapa and those busier roads, down to more of a shared type environment on other lower level roads, down to in your local communities where you're getting those 30s and 40s. The aim is that cyclists and pedestrians can work safely and with vehicles, and you're not creating a separate facility as such. So you're creating the environment. And that's what's reflected in that biking and micromobility plan, is exactly that. And it has a hierarchy and a network of routes. So then it is about that, how can you work through providing it, and the funding issue.
Okay. And last question, or it might not be really a question. My heart sank last night when I was driving home over the Fairfield Bridge, and I saw some green cycle marks that have been painted on the bridge in the last day or so while there's been work being done there. Is there a safety risk in encouraging cyclists to use the Fairfield Bridge? Because it is a relatively narrow bridge, and there are pedestrian, most times when I'm going over the Fairfield Bridge, I see cyclists come down or come on from River Road, and they typically head off to the pedestrian walkways on both sides of the bridge. But we've got these green, the standard green with the cycle in the middle.
The Sharrow. So
is it called Sharrow? Is it okay? But we've got that painted on the bridge now, and I just had a kind of a worry that we might be encouraging cyclists to use that bridge, when to me, I don't know, at my age, I would feel most uncomfortable, but I think that even a younger cyclist might feel uncomfortable riding a bike over that bridge.
So without the details, but my initial response would be Fairfield Bridge, the footpaths are quite narrow, so there's not a lot of room for cyclists and pedestrians to be moving together. And because the style of that Fairfield Bridge, the vehicle speeds are naturally quite low anyway.
Yeah.
So it actually lends itself quite nicely to that Sharrow, and for cyclists to be able to own the lane there. We just need to make sure that they're then treated appropriately either end to provide the safe sort of entry and exit off the bridge. And unfortunately, I'm not aware of that full project, but I'll find out some more.
Okay, well, there isn't a cycle, there's not room on that bridge for a cycle lane anyway.
No, I don't see a
cycle. So it is a shared...
it is a shared environment, and as I said, I think that speeds are more than low enough for that to be a safe option for that bridge. Very different bridge to Whitiora, for example, where it's a lot more open and the speeds are a lot higher.
Yeah, okay.
But for Fairfield Bridge, I think that's appropriate.
So maybe we need something to go up there to say that it's a shared,
yes,
rather than just the cycle.
Yeah.
Because I still find those confusing as to who's got the right.
Well, basically, what we would be looking is that cyclists own the lane, so that's in the middle of the lane, and everyone basically just
and the cars
tucks
have
in
to
behind
stop.
them. Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And the cyclists are probably going a speed not much slower than what the cars would be anyway across that bridge, because it's so tight.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
You're very welcome. Councillor Max.
Thank you. Thanks, Robin. And thanks, Rob. That leads quite well into my first question with regard to driver education and behaviour change. Graham talked about it, others have referenced it as well. I guess what kind of plans have we got to couple these speed management plans with the appropriate and equal campaign around being able to, to change that behaviour and get that information out to the public.
Yes. So I guess we do have a limited education budget, which we spread across a number of activities, which includes cycling. We also in the alcohol, drug driving type area, we do a lot of work. And we do work as well for our intersection campaigns, so using traffic signals and roundabouts safely, stopping on red lights, stopping on orange lights, those sorts of things. We do have funding for some work around speed, and we tend to use that in the areas where we're doing the changes to the speed limits. And I think, moving forward, that's something for the next LTP we'll be looking to probably beef up. But I would note that there is quite a large increase by Waka Kotahi in the sort of spend that they're doing at that national level as well. And so it's a matter of trying to work, that national campaign, regional as well as local. Certainly when it comes to the 30Ks for schools, the plan is to work through the physical works, make sure that we get all the schools, zebra crossings, etc. raised. And then we were wanting to do a really good campaign to basically announce all schools in Hamilton now have a 30k speed limit. And we're looking to do that towards the end of this LTP, early next, to enable us to hook into some funding from the next year's next LTP, with fingers crossed. And also working with Waka Kotahi to make sure that their speed limits on the state highways also reflect that. So it's an area that would be lovely to do more, but we're certainly trying to do the best we can with the funding we've got. And as I said, for that school campaign, we're working on.
And that school campaign, is that going to be nationwide, or I understood that we were quite unique and
we will be
early?
Very unique, and that's why I'm really keen to make sure that we've got really good messaging for that campaign when we roll out all schools.
And is the Waka Kotahi funding and education program able to be targeted for specific parts of the country so that we can influence what the messaging is locally? Or is that really just a broad brush standardised campaign?
It is very, very much at that national level. Yes.
And we wouldn't have any opportunity to influence Waka Kotahi to help to support our 30k messaging and cost of...
So they do subsidise our education campaign already, so we get 51% subsidy for the education work we do into road safety.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. I do note that I saw online how to use a roundabout, which I found very helpful, and good to be able to share that with residents. The other question I have was with regard to Peter Boss's and the Living Streets Hamilton submission around the 5 years to complete the safety program and asking us to compress that to 3. What kind of implications would that have, and what would we need to be able to consider in order to enact that in a shorter time frame?
It's primarily funding. So the funding for doing this work comes out of that Road to Zero, low cost, low risk Road to Zero program, which we have increased in year 2. So that was the report taken through to the 31st of May committee meeting. So we will certainly, and again, it's good to have that feedback from community to understand the pace, and then it's a matter of working with the elected members to make sure that we've got the funding to do that. But as I noted in my introduction, the plan, while we've given an indication of 5 years, we will be having to refresh and feed into that regional one, the regional speed management plan over the next 2 years. So that gives us an opportunity to look at that, and through the LTP process to look at the funding to look at.
I'd be really keen to understand some of those other competing things that we'll need to think about in that decision making. Yeah, thank you, Robin. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Max. Councillor Martin. And then Councillor Thompson. I don't have anything online as yet. Yeah, Councillor Martin.
Just if I can, Mr Butler's submission and the comments on the Berescourt St Andrews area, which I know well, And I'm really interested in, obviously you have the neighbourhood streets, but you then have the spine streets, which is Berescourt Sandwich. Berescourt is an interesting one because obviously you've got brow of a hill, you've got a sort of curve, you've got quite a narrow area and trying to put a cycle lane as well. Sandwich Road is sort of wider, straighter, but the two trends. One, you're getting starting to get intensification in that area, and I guess the question is, at what point do those spine streets, those principal streets, join the Totra streets of this world and become a 40k because of increasing density and cycle and pedestrian traffic? Because I've observed. So I'm just wondering if you have any comment on that in terms of a journey and a stage, because as we've discussed, I live in a street in Hamilton East at this point that is 40k, but it's not designed for 40k. I want to keep it at 40k, but unfortunately you just have people willy-nilly breaking that, and it's not necessarily safe for cyclists. But Berescourt Sandwich is quite an interesting one, and I wonder if you've got any...
So I guess, our journey for speed management for Hamilton City's been, basically leading the country. So for our 40k safer speed areas and that, so I guess spine roads and hierarchy to support traffic movement. Through the creation of the new rule, there is a new guide coming out from Waka Kotahi that still hasn't come out yet, but I have an expectation that there is going to be an expectation from them that we're going to see more of the 40Ks, less of the 50, and probably even these residential areas moving to 30 rather than 40. All of that, I guess, takes time, and we need to decide as council whether we're just happy to put up a sign and hope, or whether we really want to make sure that we have got infrastructure in place to support it. The way the rule is written at the moment, they are happy for us to put up a sign and hope. I'm not recommending that to this council for a couple of reasons. One, I don't think that that's technically right. Two, I don't think the community will accept that. And three, the indication I've had from elected members is that's not the direction they want to go either. It's about getting it right and actually creating the right environment. So again, I think that the review that we do through to the regional speed management plan will be that opportunity to have a look at that step change and see more 30s and 40s generally throughout the city. I'm really keen on making sure that we work in with that national level. When we first went out and did 40Ks, we were the first in the country, and it was really hard to sell that story. If we can get in with a bigger group and that's seen as being the norm, and we can certainly still be up there front of the pack, but we're not way out in front, I think has real advantage. And I think it will also help with your compliance as well, so that people will see that this becomes the new norm across New Zealand. It's not something that just happens in Hamilton.
I mean, obviously through the chair, well remember the pushback initially when the journey started, but and it was a sort of given that principal street spine roads 50k. But I'll give an example where, say, the new work we've done on Palmerston Street, right? So there's a natural trend where it becomes a natural, it should become, and I'm just wondering, what I guess I'm wanting to ask is, in terms of the challenges for the LTP, if we go down this track, and I'll just use Berescourt Sandwich Road, because I think there are good examples where they're very much a local neighbourhood street, absolutely, but they are a bit of a spine, use that word.
Yes.
And what challenges in our LTP where, with the next LTP, with the new council, where you start to identify some challenges around what are some other street measures, because I think naturally, to me, the observation is that people will increasingly accept a lower speed limit for a whole range of reasons, not
Yes.
least on the weekends they go cycling.
Yes, I think there's two programs that are going to see the implementation of it. One is through our standard low cost, low risk, road to zero type work.
Yeah.
But the other one that's going to play a big role is the biking and micromobility. And that is going to be where you see some of that reassignment of that road corridor, that space, and that in itself will create that very different environment that therefore makes sense to have those lower speed limits. So I think those two programs working together. Obviously, Martin Parks will be bringing a report to committee soon on that biking micromobility, and we see that being a key program in the next LTP.
So very clearly through the chair, final question is the journey will be absolutely outlined in the staff, in terms of deliberations report. I mean, I know you've shared that with us, but what I'm looking for is a challenge to the new council through their LTP, because to me, and this is not easy, there has to be significant, with Waka Kotahi funding shifts to shift these streets in terms of, natural design.
Yep.
Thank you.
Councillor Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Robin. So just on, firstly, looking through the submissions, there were quite a few specific requests around, I made a little list of some of them, but someone talked about crossings on Peach Grove Road and wanting those to be, proper pedestrian crossings. There was someone who raised concerns around Silverdale, the side roads on Borman Road and the safety of children. So are we able to, have we responded to those people in their specific requests?
So we don't respond until we've taken it through the process.
Yeah.
But we will be, and those sorts of specific examples where people are having, concerns crossing Rara, they're the sorts of things that we feed into that low cost, low risk walking and cycling program and those sorts of things. So those, they are golden nuggets that we grab and put into that process. They don't necessarily impact on the speed management plan itself, but they don't get wasted.
Okay, but those people would get, some
they
kind
will
of
get
correspondence.
responses, yes, once we've taken it through this process so that we can tell them basically what the decision of council has been, and then we can capture those other specific comments.
Cool, thank you. And we had, Peter Boss brought up the issue around the Hukanui Wairere roundabout and the suggestion that we have roundabouts set at the speed of the lowest incoming road. What are your thoughts?
So then the new rule actually sets up the ability for us to do this really simply. So that's something that I've been investigating. So prior to this, in order to make that change, we would have had to have stopped and started the speed limit on Warri Drive, for example, and said X metres out, it changes to 50.
Right.
There's a new function in the rule that lets us define which is the main road which will have the dominating speed limit. So in this case, we would make it Hukanui Road, and that enables us just to move those 50s out on the side roads. So this is also, I've been investigating it for Resolution Drive with that opening soon with the Waikato Expressway. So that's a really useful little piece of, a single paragraph in the rule that actually makes it really easy to go through and deal with all of those intersections. And it's not just roundabouts, traffic signals, any intersection where there's a difference.
And in terms of this speed management plan, are those changes that we could make as part of this process? Or?
Yes, so I don't think we need to, I'll have a quick look at the map and just pick up, but I think that we just need to make sure when we've drawn the map that we've got the colours right to show which is going to be considered to be the main road.
Excellent.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool, thank you. Another question, cool, sorry, I've got a little list here. We had, I guess just following on from what Martin was saying there, and I was listening to that conversation carefully around the 50-kilometre streets. There were quite a few submissions saying, actually, in some cases, this is too fast a lot. So in terms of the process of looking at you know, re-looking at some of these 50k streets and whether some of them should be 40. What is the time frame for that? When do we look at this regional speed management plan?
So the regional speed management plan will be starting onto that basically as soon as we finish this process.
Okay.
So there's a road classification system that's been brought in called the One Network framework. So we'll be using that and re-looking at the hierarchies.
Yep.
I think the biking and micromobility plan, once we land that network, will also be a really important overlay to enable us to have a look at that. The regional speed management plan, the consultation and that needs to be coming out. And we're yet to get the exact timing of this, but my feeling is that we need to have that really reasonably soon, such that we can feed that information into the long-term plan for the funding. So my feeling is that it's soon. The rule allows or requires Waka Kotahi to specify the time frame that the consultation takes place. So we're just waiting on them to actually tell us that so that we can make sure everything's lined up and we're in compliance. So it's a little bit grey at the moment, unfortunately, but we're certainly asking lots of questions.
Okay, thank you. No, that's helpful. And in terms of Mr. Butler's request around specifically like Bears Court, Sandwich Road, some of those areas, is there any opportunity, because I hear what you're saying around needing to not just change the signposts, but have some actual physical measures to reinforce any speed change. Is there any value in doing like a pilot kind of project, or is it better to bring that into this next iteration of the...
I think it'll fit in the next iteration quite well, because for me, I think it's that biking and micromobility is going to be really important for that, and that will provide us that opportunity. And then it's about making sure that we're putting in facilities to get across, like your biking and micromobility deals a lot with going along the road safely. Then we need to look at how you get across the road safely. So it's about finding those logical, and that's where shopping centres obviously is getting across safely, parks, those sort of schools, those sort of opportunities.
Thank you. And on the issue of clearing the cycle lanes, a growing concern is basically around, you know, more intensification is meaning that we're having more people using the streets to park on. And have we looked at proactively putting yellow lines to discourage further use of our key transport corridors for parking? Or because, and I ask this because obviously it's difficult once people start a habit to then say, sorry, you can't park here anymore. But if we set clear expectations from the beginning when development's being built, that there is not going to be any parking on this particular street or this street, then either the developer has to make sure there's on-site parking, or people don't buy it, or they know that they have to park further away. So it's setting those clear expectations, not necessarily removing parking that's being used, but saying no to any more of this parking on these side roads to try and make our job easier as we transition further down the track.
Yeah, that is the real challenge that we have, I guess. And I can, you know, I think of Peach Grove Road, for example, where we had an intensification go in there. It already had no stopping, and that just meant that everyone parks all over the berms and footpaths. So it is going to be a real upcoming issue that's going to need to be tackled more and more. And it's certainly one that any interaction that my team have with development proposals, and it doesn't matter whether it's residential or commercial, is that they need to think carefully about what parking they need to make that development work well, and they should not be relying on on-street parking in order to achieve that.
Okay.
We saw some of that yesterday, didn't we, on Australia, around the university.
Yes, yeah, there's a lot of intensification around the yes.
And parking on booms and so forth.
Yes,
So,
and this is where the number plate recognition car technology is going to make a huge difference, I believe, with the ability for the parking team to be actually out there and able to deal with it safely for themselves, but also in a timely manner rather than, having to get out chalk vehicles and those sorts of things. So those technology options are going to improve as well.
Sarah, was that the last?
I have two last very quick lines from the submission, so not the written submissions.
Okay.
One was, so just quickly, one was there were at least two people who said, please make it more obvious that there is a speed change, like putting it on the road. And so
I think those submissions related a lot to the recent state highway changes.
Right.
And I agree very strongly that there was very little ability for people to pick up a change in the number. We actually, where we're putting speed limit changes, put a bright yellow call flute sign on the signpost for the first month to really just raise awareness that something has changed.
Okay. And last one was someone brought up preschoolers and, slower speeds, I guess, outside of those kinds of facilities. So we've got schools, but what consideration is being given to your kindergartens, preschool, facilities and stuff? And
so that's, I guess, the next tranche of work. A lot of those will get picked up with the residential lower speeds anyway. And certainly where we're looking at schools, you quite often have a collection of schools reasonably close, and you'll have preschools often associated with the schools. So we're more likely to end up with, a few streets in an area at that 30k just to deal with the schools. So that'll be our starting point, and then I think it'll grow from there.
okay, cool. Thank you. I look forward to that next review.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, so thank you, colleagues. Robin, I see we're going for a second round. I'll quickly jump in with a couple of my questions, and then we'll go for one more round. And I just remind colleagues that really Robin is seeking direction from members as to what further information they would like to be included in the deliberations report, rather than just a general Robin's there and let's ask lots of questions. But I'm sure that's not what's motivating people. Robin, Graham mentioned in his submission he had a question regarding speed cameras, and he had a question regarding red light cameras. I think I'm up to date with what that situation is, but I wonder if you could just confirm that to me.
Yes.
And what role that will play in our sort of speed management plan going forward.
So legislation was changed to move the speed cameras, and they've widened that to call them safety cameras. So that includes your speed and your red light as a safety camera. So the legislation's changed, so that's moving from police to Waka Kotahi to manage. The speed limits rule and the requirements of speed management plans moving forward are to include safety cameras as part of those plans. We are very reliant currently on Waka Kotahi getting up to speed, excuse the pun, on dealing with those so that they can be included in the next iteration. I see that as being quite important. And we've also been asking further to questions from elected members as to the ability for councils to perhaps put some funding into a program. The running of the program, the cameras and the issuing of enforcement tickets and those sorts of things still to be run centrally through Waka Kotahi, but I can certainly include a bit of an update in the report.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gallagher and Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, and I'm and this is not a sort of Robin's here. I will have a further conversation because will and do ring Robin on the phone regularly. But I just want to. One is the communication. So we have submissions, and basically what you said, this is a journey, and I guess one assumes that we're going to communicate to neighbourhoods that we are on a journey. That what we're proposing is not the end of the road, so to speak. It's it's an ongoing journey. Is that a fair summary? And I guess is how we're going to keep engaging with our community on these.
Yes, certainly the speed management plan sets us up as staff, I guess, for that direction. We then do a lot of consultation with the areas as we move into those speed limit changes. And that, you know, not only about the speed limit, but the sort of infrastructure that we're looking at. Even in the case of Mahoe, we're looking at changing the way the parking's laid out to try and utilise that.
So Councillor Rob suggested the reference, the bus tour we did with one end of the university precinct. Sarah's talked about down the track some sort of possible pilot program in the possibly St Andrews Beresford area, purely because I'm not suggesting that we're going to get high density in that area like the University of Melville, but my observation in that neighbourhood, the trend lines are starting. You know, we're seeing some bungalows are removed for duplexes. Sandwich Road, Beresford is a major spine road into the city, Awatiri Avenue. So you've got all the sort of the cycling network, the bus lanes, the whole thing. I wouldn't go near Te Rapa Strait, obviously, as a cyclist, logically. I'd be alarmed if any members of my family did, and I don't want to say it's too hard. It's not. But I'm just saying that sort of, and I'm just wondering at what point might we consider, not necessarily in that area, but it seems to me that there's an ingredients of, you know, a pilot program for the next step, if you can see what I mean, because basically you're contemplating, you know, the 40k along what we call a principal street area.
I guess there's several parts to that. As I said, biking and micromobility. There's also the parking principles and policies work that's been going on in conjunction with Access Hamilton. Even Access Hamilton itself will help us with setting that new direction. I think the timing of work, though, is still very much working through those processes, feeding into that regional plan, which literally will, you know, that work will be starting once we've landed this plan.
So I assume through the chair you'll reference that in your report, obviously.
Yes, I can
and
talk
what
about
I, without telling you how to write a report, I would like some referencing to potential pilot, to potential neighbourhoods that may lend itself to the next step. And I would argue, I mean, I have views around Hamilton East, which I've conveyed to you, where we put the signs up, but we don't necessarily, you know, change behaviours because the road design has to follow it as well. But I wonder if that can be included. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Robb.
Yeah, look, just one point or question, and that's what I would like to see included in the report back from staff, and that's how we might deliver the plan. You know, I heard today from Peter he'd like the 5 years down to 3 years, and I think just generally there's some enthusiasm around the table to try and deliver as quickly as possible, and I'm just wanting to get a feel around the fact that we've got a $14 million OPEX deficit next year. We're getting very close to the headroom in terms of our debt. And I read on the weekend that Waka Kotahi has got a $2 billion funding deficit. You know, quite clearly, whatever we want to do in the interests of road safety, and they need to do in the interests of road safety, there may not be those funds available at the time that we would like them. So maybe some indication from Waka Kotahi in the report might be useful for us to actually set a plan on how we could deliver what we need to do. And it may then mean that we've got to prioritise some of the areas. You know, if Heafy Terrace takes a priority over Varden Road, or however we do it, and maybe do a program that would fit within the availability of funds from the council and from Waka Kotahi.
Yeah, so the speed management plan does give an indication of the timing, and that's based on our current funding regime, and based on Waka Kotahi funding that they have committed to for the next 2 years.
Okay.
It's beyond that the crystal ball starts.
Yeah, and maybe getting some indicator from them as to how bad this $2 billion deficit is. $2 billion is a lot of money, and somehow they'll have resources, but they have to reallocate them.
I can only ask, I can't guarantee.
Yeah, no,
anything for the
I understand
committee.
that, but I think we need to have them on side with us to understand what our community wants, and the urgency, if there is urgency in particular areas.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I might be getting into debate here, but I'd like to see that in the report so that we're actually putting some information out to the public that tells them what the constraints we might have in terms of delivering it, so we don't raise those expectations.
That's a very valid point.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Robin.
All right. So my good friend, Councillor Angela, anything you would like to add?
No, thank you, my good friend, Chair Wilson.
Thank you. I've already heard from my good friend, the Deputy Mayor. So, right, it looks like we've all provided the direction that we want to provide to you, young Robin. Thank you. So, colleagues, on page 8, we have the staff's recommendation. I'm sure one of you would love to move it. Councillor Sarah, look at that. Thank you. And Councillor Maxine would love to second it. All right, so it's now on the floor. I open for the debate. If there is no debate, then I will... Councillor Gallagher. Martin.
Very useful, and I think what is critical is that, as I mentioned in my questioning, is that we clearly communicate to the community, obviously, that this is a journey, you know, and that we have a very clear aspiration to be safe streets, living streets, and that means that streets are not just for vehicles that exceed 50k, but they are increasingly now, obviously, for pedestrians, cyclists, mobility, you know, there's a range of users, both in terms of on the roadway, on the footpath, on the cycle lanes, etc. And it's a continuous communication with our community. And I think over the last 10 years, my observation is I think the dial has absolutely shifted, and it will continue to shift as, for example, even we have an increase in cycling, which we're starting to see from a commuter point of view, you know, getting to work, etc., but also from a recreational point of view. And it's certainly where I live at present, it's extremely healthy to see young parents with young kids cycle, you know, as a recreational family pastime, older people, obviously. But obviously the street speed limits and design must accompany that, and also the education that we still need to do, because we've seen horrendous examples of motorists who in the rest of their lives are good law-abiding people but just don't connect the brain. And I've certainly observed parts of Hamilton East, Beresford area where I think, you know, there's a journey that we need to take. So I'm very keen. The other thing, though, I will say is we did a tour the other day, or yesterday, and if we go to parts of the university precinct, bear with me, around parking and speeds, you know, these are very high density areas where you have, and it just seems to me there are other parts of our city, particularly with the government legislation around, you know, what we have to allow to be built on existing sections. You know, the two stories, the whole density stuff that we have actually pushed back on because we don't think that is good design. But it seems to me that part of this equation is we need to, if you like, pre-fit our roading network and not retrofit. So I'll just, if I may, and I'm not predicting that Sandwich Road or McFarlane Street becomes a huge high density overnight. You know, I just used two examples of streets that I'm familiar with. But it's really important that we pre-fit as much as we can, because I think we then get a situation which we're seeing in chunks of Hillcrest, the University Precinct, Melville, where we're now going in and we're literally saying, shock, horror, this is terrible, all right? But this has evolved, this has grown because you've had an increasing high density. So there's a safety issue, but there's also adapting our streets to medium to high density residential, where literally the bungalows go, in my view, in many cases, sadly, and are replaced by higher density, duplexes.
Thanks, Councillor Gallagher. Now, we're going to go to the vote. Oh. Go ahead. Right. Councillor Sarah.
I wanted to say thank you to those who submitted today to take the time to come in and speak to us directly. And that I'm looking forward to the changes in here, but also taking on board the feedback we've heard today. I'm looking forward to that bigger piece of work with the regional speed management plan, where we can take some more of that feedback on board in a more substantive way. So please do keep engaging with us on that, because it sounds like it'll be over the next couple of years. Thank you.
Thank you. So, colleagues, we'll put this to the vote using our hands. Good on you, Councillor Donovan, who's terribly sick at home, but you're holding in. So all those in favour say aye. Aye, I see my friends all with their hands up. Those against, it looks like.
The motion is carried unanimously.
Well done. Thank you, colleagues. We are now moving on to our next and final item, item 6, traffic speed limit and road closure hearing panel terms of reference. Colleagues, you'll find that on page 37. Robin, I'm assuming you're... Oh.
I can speak to this briefly.
Oh, wonderful.
So this is just a minor matter to amend the terms of reference so that after the changes that we have coming, where we are revoking the traffic bylaw, we can maintain the terms of reference for the traffic panel as is, where that they can confirm speed matters. Sorry, we're not revoking the traffic bylaw, we're revoking, is it? The speed limit bylaw. Yes, sorry, wrong one. So that's to, otherwise if we did not do that, the risk there would be that all speed limit matters would need to be brought to a full hearings and engagement or full council. So this will just maintain the traffic panel terms of reference as is, noting the new process.
Thank you. Colleagues, I'm happy to open it up for questions, if there are any questions. While you're thinking, if not, I'm happy to move the recommendation on page 32nd, and I'm sure Councillor Robb is happy to second.
Yes, I am. Sorry, I just missed the point there, and I may have missed it when I read it. Sorry, just in a question.
Yes.
Does this mean that the changes are approved by this committee and not referred as a recommendation to council?
No, sorry, this is a recommendation to the council.
Yeah, so I know this is, but in future, are speed reductions or changes a matter for this committee only and not for council to subsequently confirm?
That's the current process, so traffic panel currently has those delegations.
Oh, okay, so there's no change in that regard. Okay, yeah. That's fine.
It's not a power grab, I promise.
No, I'm just thinking about, the messaging that gets through, given that we sometimes struggle here with getting a quorum, that it may come as a surprise to the rest of council that changes have happened without their knowledge.
Yeah.
So I'm just wanting to protect that position. I'm not concerned about a power grab, but I get the drift. Yeah, no, look, I'm happy. Thank you.
Okay. Right, no other questions? I'm going to put it, all those in favour, show your hands up. Those against?
Oh, thank you, Councillor Donovan. Can you confirm if you're voting in favour or against? Yeah, in favour. Yeah. Okay, we'll take that as an in favour vote. The motion is carried unanimously.
Colleagues, that brings the day to an end. Thank you very much for turning up. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for hanging in there. Thanks, Ange and Jeff.
Thank you, Chair.